Okay, ready to unlock a secret code of the universe.
That's intriguing.
Because today, we're diving deep into the world of modes. And Feynman's our guide.
Modes, like with music and sound.
You know it. But it goes way beyond that, trust me. By the time we're done with chapter 49 of his lectures on physics, you'll be seeing these vibrations everywhere.
Okay, you've piqued my curiosity.
So Feynman starts simple, a wave on a string, like you might picture on a guitar. What's he getting at there? Why start with something so basic?
He's setting the stage for how systems, even complex ones, like to vibrate. It all starts with energy moving through something, like a wave traveling along a rope.
Right, makes sense. But that wave can't just go on forever, right?
Exactly. Eventually it hits a boundary, like the end of that rope tied to, say, a wall. And that's where the fun begins.
What happens? Did it just disappear? Poof.
Not quite. It gets reflected, like it's hitting a mirror. Feynman describes it as the wave being flipped upside down as it bounces back.
Okay, I'm picturing a wave hitting that wall and bouncing back flips.
Sure.
So how does that create a standing wave?
It's all about interference. The original wave heading toward the wall clashes with that reflected wave coming back.
A wave battle.
Exactly. And at certain points, the peaks of one wave line up perfectly with the troughs of the other, and they cancel each other out.
So it's like they're canceling each other out in some places, but what about the rest of the wave?
That's where you get the standing wave. It's like the wave is vibrating in place.
Like those wobbly bridges.
Kind of. Some points stay perfectly still, Feynman calls those nodes, while other parts oscillate with maximum amplitude.
Creating that up and down pattern. Okay, I'm with you so far. We've got waves bouncing around, making patterns. But where do these modes come into play?
That's where it gets even more interesting. Let's take that rope tied at both ends, just like a guitar string. Because it's fixed, only certain waves can exist on it.
It's like trying to fit different sized boxes into a space. Only some fit just right.
Exactly. Only specific wavelengths, and therefore frequencies, can create those standing waves.
And those specific frequencies, those are the modes.
You got it. Those are the natural frequencies, or modes, of that string. And that's why a guitar string produces a specific note when you pluck it.
So when I pluck a string, I'm forcing it to vibrate at one of its natural frequencies, one of its modes, and that's what creates the sound.
Exactly. It's like the string has a preference for how it wants to vibrate.
Wow. Okay, that's amazing. Does this work the same with something like a drum?
It does. Feynman takes this idea from one dimension, that string, to a two-dimensional surface, like a drum head.
So more space for those waves to bounce around.
Right. And that means...
more mode.
Yes. Think of those cool patterns you see on a drum head when someone hits it. Those are visual representations of the different modes of vibration.
So the shape of the drum, how the drum head is stretched, those all matter.
Absolutely. And it gets even cooler. This whole idea of modes, it's not just for strings and drums. Feynman says modes are everywhere.
Okay, now you've got to elaborate on that. What else did Feynman use as an example?
Think about how we make sounds with our voices. It's not just about our vocal cords.
What? You mean like how I shape words?
Well, even more basic. The shape of our mouths, how open or closed it is, where your tongue is, all that changes which frequencies get amplified.
So my mouth is like a musical instrument.
Exactly. That's why we sound different when we say ooh versus e. Different frequencies are getting emphasized.
That's so weird to think about. Is that why helium makes our voices all high?
Perfect example. Helium's less dense than air, right? Sound travels faster.
So it's like fast-forwarding this sound.
Kinda. The resonant frequencies of your vocal tract go way up when you're full of helium. High-pitched voice.
Okay, that's wild. So strings, drums, our own voices.
What other everyday things did Feynman use for this mode idea?
He circles back to something we talked about earlier, those coupled pendulums.
The two that are linked together, right? Those have modes, too. I thought modes were about waves, not just things swinging.
It's easy to think that way. But remember, modes are how a system likes to vibrate. And even those pendulums have two distinct modes.
Okay, I'm all ears. What are the pendulum modes? In one, both pendulums swing together, perfectly in sync. Like the spring connecting them isn't even there.
Just along for the ride. So what's the other way?
They swing in opposition. One goes left, the other goes right, stretching and compressing that spring.
A pendulum tug of war. Does that change how fast they swing?
Absolutely. The spring adds extra force, so that mode vibrates at a higher frequency than the synchronized one.
Wow, even something that simple has these hidden ways it can vibrate.
And here's the kicker. Feynman then says this applies to A and Y linear system.
Wait, A and Y. even if it's super complicated.
He says no matter how complex, it can be broken down into a combination of these simpler modes.
Like taking apart a recipe to see the ingredient.
Exactly. And just when you think you've got modes figured out, Feynman connects it to quantum mechanics.
Quantum mechanics. Oh boy, here we go. But how do modes fit into all that?
Remember how each mode has its own frequency? Well, in the quantum world, frequency is like saying energy.
So instead of vibrating at a frequency, it's about having a certain energy. How does that work?
It's about how energy works down at that quantum level. It's not this smooth, continuous thing anymore.
It's not. What is it then?
It's quantized, like energy comes in these little packets.
Okay, so not a smooth flow, more like those candies, they're individually wrapped. Each one's a burst of energy.
That's a great way to think about it. And just like those waves on a string, remember, only certain frequencies fit.
Right, to make those standing waves, the modes.
Atoms have that too, but with energy levels, those levels are determined by their modes.
So the energy levels are like the modes of an atom, kind of.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's wild, right? Feynman ties this huge thing about how systems vibrate to what's happening with tiny atoms.
That is mind-blowing. So
Yeah.
we've gone from like plugging a guitar string to the energy inside an atom. It's like this hidden pattern across everything.
That's physics for you, finding these elegant connections no one ever thought of.
But you mentioned earlier how things get weirder with the frequencies of those two-dimensional modes, like on the drumhead.
Absolutely. The string was easy, the frequencies were nice multiples, double, triple, and so on.
Yeah, looking back at the chapter, that drumhead table was all over the place, frequency-wise, not just simple multiples anymore.
The shape messes it all up. How much wider the drumhead is than it is tall, that changes the exact frequencies.
So a long, skinny drum will have different modes than a more square one,
Yeah,
even if they're tuned to the same note overall.
exactly. That's a big part of why drums have such unique sounds. Even if they're in tune, technically, their modes are all different.
So those patterns you see on a vibrating drumhead, those aren't just pretty, they actually tell us something about the sound.
It's like a hidden code. And this thing where the frequencies get messy, that happens even in one dimension sometimes, too.
Wait, really? I thought we covered that with the string example. One dimension, fixed ends, done deal.
Feynman uses a hanging chain as an example. Unlike our perfect string, a chain hanging down.
Well, gravity pulls on it, right?
Yeah, so it's tighter at the top than the bottom. Didn't think about that. That throws off those nice, even frequencies. They get more complex, richer, like the sound has more depth.
So even a simple chain hanging there has hidden complexity if you know how to listen to the frequencies.
That's what Feynman's showing us, how to listen to the universe in this whole new way.
It really makes you appreciate how everything is connected, even in ways you'd never imagine.
And how much more there is to discover. That's the beauty of physics and of life itself.
Well said. And on that note, we'll leave you all to contemplate the symphony of the cosmos. Thanks for joining us for this incredible deep dive. Until next time.